Hi, we are back talking about grandparenting ABCs, and today we're going to talk about C, and C stands for connections. Grandparenting A to Z is all about making connections between the generations. That is so important. Um, Relations or connections mean relationships. And when we lose relationships between the generations, we lose so much. That continuity of family history, family relationships and support systems gets lost when we break those connections. So why is it important to keep those? Well, think about everything that gets passed down. Family history, I mentioned that already. And your support system, who babysits the grandchildren? Usually it's the grandparents. That support system, that internal family structure gets lost. What about passing down faith and values? Family values, that's a huge part of what we learn as young people, is just what is important in our family. Is it faith? Is it work ethic? What are the skills we learn? Life skills, how to communicate and interact. What do we do for hobbies and crafts? In my family, every generation of women, as far back as I can remember, and I knew my great-grandmother, we all learned how to sew. That was just a part of our childhood passage. I got my first sewing machine when I was in grade school. It was a treadle because they didn't want me to run over my fingers with an electric sewing machine. But I made an apron. That's the very first thing I sewed. And every generation has learned to sew. And every person in every generation has learned to sew. So my sisters and I all did. I've already given my daughters-in-law sewing machines and have plans for we've only got one granddaughter, but maybe some of the boys will take up sewing. I know two of my sons learned to sew and they enjoyed it. They did a few things, and I've got one who now does leather work, and sewing is a part of the leather work that he does. So those skills, those things are important. They're a part of our joy of living, the crafting that we do. So passing down those life skills, whether it's something like I just described, or maybe your family is into cooking, or maybe hunting and preparation of meat, all of those are life skills that we pass down. Now, what about businesses? A lot of families have business interests that get passed down from generation to generation. That happens because of the connections between the generations that are nurtured, those relationships that get nurtured and taken care of so that there can be smooth transitions of business interests. Farming and ranching families, I've seen lots of that in the estate planning world. How do we plan so that farm or ranch stays in the family for generations? That's usually really important to a ranching family. All of that hinges on the connections that we keep between generation, the relationships that we nurture, and the choices that we make to pass down family history, family skills, family interests, values, you name it. So relationship accountability is a large part of those connections. And I would just ask you a question. As you're thinking about this in your own family and those connections between the generations, what are you doing, right or wrong, to maintain connections in your family? Every one of us can answer that question with probably some good points and some bad points. So I'm just going to encourage you to work on anything you find that needs a little help. You need to build some bridges between the generations and keep those connections strong, or heal those connections. How are you creating continuity between the generations in your family? Think about it, take some actions today, and make those connections healthy. Thank you for following Grandparenting A to Z. We hope that the information we're putting out gives you some food for thought and some actions to take in your family so that those generations are built up strong and healthy. Thanks a lot. Take care.